thank you everyone for being here. When Anna asked me to moderate, I jumped at this because I figured I might have some faces on screen that I was familiar with. I've been at Sidwell since the fall of 2008. So I know Kiki, I know Leah, I know Lyndon. I see Singletary over here in the audience. Really, really good to see everybody. Singletary, I'm going to thank you especially for joining, because there's a lot of college basketball on right now. So you could be doing a lot of other things, but you chose to be here. So thank you to you. Thank you to the rest of the audience. Panelists, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment to introduce yourselves, and I'll just kind of call on you based on where you are on my screen. So Andrew Smith-Herman, would you start us off, please?
Sure, good evening. Andrew Smith-Herman, class of 2006. I went to St. Lawrence University, a small college in upstate New York, for undergrad, and Georgetown for grad school. So I will also be watching college basketball in about 52 minutes to see if we can beat Seton Hall. I work in Manhattan at an advertising technology company. My job title is Senior Manager of Knowledge Management, which means I build systems for people to access information. And I live out in the New York City suburbs.
Thank you very much. Kiki.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiki Chang. I was class of 2011. I did my undergrad at Yale and then my master's at London School of Economics. I am a senior consultant at a firm called APCO Worldwide on their social impact practice. So I help companies, foundations, nonprofits think about their approach to climate, gender, environmental, social governance, equity, and justice. And I live in New York City.
Thank you, Kiki. Lyndon.
Hi, everyone. Lyndon Harris. I am a Sidwell Friends graduate in the class of 2016. Went to Columbia University, where I played football for 3 years. I studied financial economics and sustainable development. I just graduated this past May and started a full-time role at Morgan Stanley in the Structured Products Capital Markets Group, where I cover securitizations and all kinds of, bespoke financing, execution and advisory services for the firm across, residential real estate and transportation industry groups. Really excited to be here. Currently on the Black Alumni Alliance Advisory Board as the Young Alumni Committee Clerk, and excited to hear what everyone else is up to.
Thank you, Lyndon. And Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah Johnson, class of 2018. I'm currently a third year at Drexel University studying computer science and cybersecurity. I'm also an incoming Blue Team co-op as security risk advisor as well. I'll be working in the next 6 months doing offensive cybersecurity.
Very cool. Thank you all for being here. And it's just, I'm sitting here parent proud to hear the great things that these students who I walk the hallways with, and Andrew, sorry I missed you back a couple of years, Andrew, but just to see these students who I walk the hallways with, just involved in great things. So let's start. Each of you talked about where you went to college. So let me start with this question. Sort of anybody can hop in, and not all panelists have to answer each question. So if you want to sort of just sit back, that's fine. But what influenced your college choice the most? And if you could choose again, would you make the same choice?
I think I can speak to this the most because I'm currently in college still. But I chose Drexel really just because Drexel has a really unique program called co-op. So your middle three, most people are in a 5-year program, and your middle 3 years, actually you aren't in school full time. You're in school for 6 months, and the other 6 months you're working a full-time job in your field. Like I said, I'm working the next 6 months as security risk advisor. So it's really a unique experience. Also, their Division I basketball team here with the men's team, and at Sidwell, I was a manager, and I get to be a manager here with their team. And we just won the CAA championship, so we're going to March Madness this year, which is pretty exciting.
That's very cool. Thank you, Lee.
I can go next, maybe. So I chose Yale. Honestly, it was I was surprised to go there. I wanted to go to school in the UK originally. And I did not realize that you needed, I think, like 5 AP exams to be able to apply to a British university and like be more competitive. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to stay in the US, Yale seems like a good choice in that it's had a really great international lens and perspective. I did political science and African studies, and Yale has one of the best resourced African studies programs in the country. And just the wealth of knowledge that the university has and access. I mean, any obscure book I needed or wanted, I got for my research. Many speakers that I wanted to have bring on campus and engage with, from the Prime Minister of Kenya, where my dad is from. He came to campus, I got to ask him firsthand questions for an hour. So that's what Yale did for me, and part of the reason I chose that school.
Thank you, Kiki. Lyndon or Andrew?
Yeah, I can jump in.
I mean,
go
ahead.
Yeah. So my process was a bit, it was kind of streamlined because I was recruited for football. I was really going for, honestly, like the best, I guess, like, academic institutions I could kind of reach just like, through the football pipeline. And Columbia was just, an early investor in me personally. And I really connected with the coaches and really appreciated the culture that they had. They had recently cleaned house, the football program. They were, historically bad at football. And the year before I was recruited, they had an entirely new coaching staff. They brought the most winningest coach from, like, in the Ivy League over from Penn. And I just kind of bought into the mission and, was really excited to go. Also was excited at being in New York and kind of having that proximity to, business and economics, which is what I studied.
Thank you, Lyndon.
I'd say that for me, it was the right place at the right time, and that was the most important thing, right? Because that's obviously the $64,000 question: is would you do it all again, right? I still have professors that I, connected with, and they still guide me to this day, right, as I do research. And I just remember being so overwhelmed by a lot of places, right? I needed somewhere that was smaller and that was more manageable, even though, I took the bus to Sidwell. I remember being in some, I forget what school it was, some larger Midwestern university, and had an on-campus bus system. And I was like, that is too much for me right now. Like, I can't, this is an entire city. I cannot manage this right now. And so, I'm really happy that I went smaller. I'm really happy to have made the connections that I made, and, still to this day, I have to say yes.
Thank you. Thank you all. So, it's, we're at a Quaker school. Quakerism has always been a part of Sidwell, obviously. So I'm wondering, what part, if any, did Quaker education play in your choice to pursue your either your degree or your career path? Right? Was that a part of the calculus for any of you?
I mean, I think 100%. I think that Sidwell really has contributed and shaped the person that I am. I think a lot of my job involves speaking truth to power. So, for example, today we're talking about at work, how do we mark George Floyd's anniversary? How do we work with companies to do that well? And a lot of that means having difficult conversations with people who might not want to go there. And I think that Sidwell not only equipped me with the vocabulary to have those conversations, but not to be afraid of having those conversations with people who are quote unquote powerful because of the, Quaker values of equity, Quaker values of integrity, and of community. So I think it very much influenced the work that I do now, as well as how I approach that work.
I think very similarly to that, I think a lot about letting your life speak, and I extend that to me, that means to me, and I extend that to think about, making sure that other people can speak as well. A lot of my work depends on this concept called the community of practice, which is a group of people that want to come together and do something better, right, and get better at something, whether it can be anything, right? That could be offline, online, anywhere in the world. And if you don't have a community that includes everybody, if not everybody has the ability to let their lives speak, then you don't have community, and you're not going to get the outcomes, personally and professionally, that you need in order to do your job. So I'm always very cognizant of making sure, somebody who constructs those communities and relies on them for my professional objective, to make sure that they're as inclusive as possible, and everybody has a chance to speak who wants to.
Thank you, Kiki. Thank you, Andrew. Leah or Lyndon?
I don't think personally, like the spices or like the Quaker values really influence like my career choices or like where I went to school. I do think the one thing that really did influence me though was like I heard a lot of alumni say, "Oh, you're gonna miss meaningful worship," and I was like, "That's not true." I hate it, but like when you leave, like having that space where you can just sit for 30, 40 minutes and be able to be with your thoughts and not have to worry about anything. That's one thing I did try to take, because like with college you get a lot of stress, and just take that time to reflect on myself and like meditate or do whatever. That was the one thing that kind of did influence me now.
I think for me, the Quaker values haven't really guided my career path, but they've definitely influenced how I've navigated myself, and how I've kind of grown into an adult. I think community especially stood out to me, just kind of like being from where I am from in Prince George's County, Maryland. I've always kind of looked at my journey as, opening doors for myself and like keeping it open for people that come after me. So that's just kind of been a theme throughout my college career. In college, I was really involved in mentorship with other, young, like Black or otherwise diverse students who are interested in like the same career path as I am. Going to Columbia, a lot of people are really interested in finance and banking and that whole, realm of, a professional pursuit. And after like learning what I did, kind of, getting my internships and getting into the programs that I did, I just took it upon myself to, really kind of bring the community along with me. And it's been successful. I've had a lot of mentees who have, like, I've coached them through interviews and helped them get internships, connect them with people I know, and continue to like participate in organizations that do the same. So that's been really impactful for me, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Going back to Leah, what you said about meaning for worship. So for those of you who don't know, we're operating right now in a hybrid model on campus. So classrooms have plexiglass around the desks. I'm teaching in the choral room in the Arts Center. And so I was on my way out of the Arts Center, and I was walking by the meeting room, and I looked in, and I just took a right turn. I hadn't expected to. I just said to myself, I want to sit for a little while. And so I just walked in, and as soon as I started walking across those floorboards, right? Those of you who have been in the meeting room will know that the floorboards are particular. They are unique. There's a texture as you walk on them. And I missed that almost right away. And then I sat down, and it just felt so good to sit there. And I was silent for a little. I just sat in silence for a little while, took my phone out because I could, and check some email. But just being in that space was just that's to me one of the biggest losses in this year of COVID and this year of hybrid learning. For me, has been a meaning for worship. So Leah, the teachers definitely share your feeling of missing it when it's not a part of the community. And and I imagine if I ever leave Sidwell, that'll be one thing that I really, really miss. Thank you for your answers. Let's turn to college then, right? And I'm wondering if any of you would like to share a story or a lesson that you learned about finding community in college, right? Finding something to replace meaning for worship, if that's what you missed, or some other way that you have found peace, or if you learned lessons about navigating professional networks and connections. What part has community played for you after leaving Sidwell?
I think as far as lessons learned, I mean, the biggest lesson that I always think of is be ready, right? And the you never know when an opportunity to make a connection or to kind of grow your community is going to present itself. And so, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have all the answers, but I always like to say that, you at least want to have an answer that you're proud of that answers the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And that can extend to a friendship, a group of like-minded individuals, that can extend to somebody who you're trying to make a professional connection to. I always like to say that as long as you're prepared to speak confidently or constructively about the impact that you want to make in the world, that's never a bad thing.
I think there's like, I'm going to get the quote wrong. There's some quote that's like you can't make footprints if you stand on your tiptoes. And I feel like that applies to how you approach people. So I think that you have to really be present with people and pay attention and nurture relationships. I was thinking about this the other day as I had dinner with another Sidwell alum who actually happened to go to Yale with me an undergrad. And just like kind of the way that she remembered the things that mattered to me and said, oh, I actually heard about this and this would be really helpful to you. But I think it's because I've always been so intentional about that relationship and nurturing it and being super hyper present. And I think that is an approach that helps build community and also ensures that community, you're top of mind for that community, that they have your best interests at heart.
Thank you, Kiki. Thank you, Andrew. Leah or Lyndon, any lessons about finding community, navigating professional networks and connections? I know you probably haven't navigated quite as much since you're in college and just out of college. Congratulations, by the way, Lyndon. So let me actually, then I'll segue to this question. How has the Sidwell Friends Alumni Network supported you? Can you share experiences of, you just mentioned Kiki connecting with someone else from Sidwell at Yale. Can any of you share experiences of connecting with fellow alums, either professionally or personally?
I think for me, the Sidwell Alumni Network has really helped me. I bother Anna all the time, especially come fall time, because at Drexel we're applying for co-ops and we have to apply for our own jobs that are not given to us by Drexel. And I know like me and Josh, who also goes to Drexel with me, literally living down the street from me, we've tried to utilize that alumni network as much as possible, especially with the fellow alums in Philly. What I found really interesting is that it's always like trying to remember like what you're like, the smallest details about your friends can actually matter. Like later on, a lot of people don't ask your friends at Sidwell, like, what do your parents do? Or like, what are they into? And that has been the thing that has helped me the most, like trying to network fellow alums, like fellow friends that I have that are alums that see what their parents are doing, see what they're doing. I'm able to leverage that to find opportunities and things like that. I mean, I just think the Sidwell network has been really helpful. And it's kind of sad. A lot of my friends like that graduated with me don't really know that they can reach out and, get connected with other alumni, which I wish other people would know more about.
I mean, I am the class secretary for my class, and some people, well, Lauren Caldwell, who I know is in the webinar, knows I send tons of emails. I'll try and keep everyone updated on Facebook. But honestly, I love it because it's a pretext not to only to be nosy, but to kind of connect with people. And I think that, there are people who, I'd lost touch with for years, but for example, a Sidwell alum in my class, who every time I'm in San Francisco, I reach out to her. We always have dinner. My closest group of friends from my class at Sidwell, we just organized a COVID safe outdoor baby shower for her. And so Sidwell continues to have such an impact in my life, personally, professionally. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to be class secretary. And Jasmine, encourage you to take that role. People think it's thankless, but it's a nice opportunity and a pretext to connect with your classmates.
And then Andrew, do you want to jump in about the alumni network?
Yeah, sure. I think from my end, I'm still, I hesitate to speak too much just because I think I'm still at the, beginning of what really what connecting with alumni really looks like for me. It's part of the reason I, wanted to be on the Black Alumni Advisory Board, just to really build those relationships with people that came before me that I don't know, and people that come after me that, I can help support in some way. So I think it's been really, impactful for me personally so far. And, I was one of the few students that went to Columbia in my year or the years around me. So I felt like I was on a little bit of an island up here in New York. So getting back in touch with everyone, even seeing people on this call has been definitely gratifying.
I think that Anna probably dreads late July when I get super excited about the alumni soccer game. And so it's been a pleasure to help run that and, get 12 to 15 minutes of glory. So that's about all the steam I got these days. But it is nice to have, to see people as they get older. For me, it's about being in, people's weddings and, as Kiki was saying, kids. And, that's just such a fantastic thing to have with people that, I was talking to one of my best friends the other day. He's been one of the best friends since seventh grade, right? That's 21 years of friendship, of Sidwell friendship, right? And so all those opportunities we have just to come together, either professionally or personally, are very valuable. It's great to see everybody grow up.
Thank you so much. And actually, let's kind of stay there for a moment. Can you talk about the role, if not other alums from other years, what role have your classmates that you graduated with played as you moved on to college and then into professional life? And maybe specifically for Lyndon and Leah, who are in or just out of college, how much contact do you have with the folks that you graduated with, and what does that contact mean for you as you're sitting in your dorm room, as you're headed to work in the morning?
I think through college, I made an effort to every time I was back home to kind of like see my closest friends and like make sure I reach out to them and call them and just check up on them in general. Because I think a lot of the experiences I had in high school are just kind of like crystallized in time. Those never change. Like we kind of have that basis of a relationship. So in my opinion, I'd love to continue to, put into those relationships and like build them as we get older. And these are also some of the people that know me the best. And I find myself often running into an issue in my life or some kind of crossroads where I'm just like I have no one around me that like knows me well enough to help me navigate. And I have to call, one of my friends from high school to just like let them know what the situation is. Maybe we haven't even spoken for months, but just because we have that, foundation of a relationship, I feel very comfortable, just kind of sharing with that person. So for me, so far, it's just been, personal development and, continuing to grow with a community of people that know you well and, kind of were there from day one.
I think for me what's the most interesting is that the people that I'm closest with from Sidwell actually weren't for my year. They're all like usually 1 to 2 years before me. Especially being in Philly for college, a lot of us are here between Penn, Temple, and now me and Josh at Drexel. So I feel like it's always been like whether or not I had to call Jelani because my car wouldn't start, or I was going to get groceries together. It's really been, we all know that it doesn't matter like how close we were at Sidwell. If we need something, we know that we could always call somebody to come help us. And I think having that as like a fallback here has been really helpful, knowing that if I'm struggling with something that I may not I may not be comfortable enough with my college friends to understand like these people knew me for like 4 years before college, and going back to that. And then like Linda said, when I'm home, I try to see my other friends that aren't in Philly. I just think having that network has been really, really strong for me, and really helpful.
Thank you. We have a current student here, so I'd love to not to kind of center Jasmine, but let's center Jasmine for a moment. Do any of you have advice for fellow alums or for students who might find themselves confronted with barriers similar to those that you may have experienced? And I think if I could kind of expand this question, maybe even past advice, how, you were all Black students at a predominantly white institution. And so there are things that come along with that. And it's been one of the things that I have enjoyed about being abused, being just in the school, but also specifically being one of the co-advisors for the BSU is sort of helping students at times to navigate that. So what has that meant to you moving on? How did it prepare you to be out in the world, which is a predominantly white world? What are some things that you took with you from Sidwell as Black students out into the world?
I think when I was in Sidwell, I think I was really active, like in social justice. This was kind of like the first wave of Black Lives Matter. So there was a lot of, just political tension, especially around like 2014 and 15 in the world and within Sidwell generally. So, these were really, tense times, I think. And what I really learned, like transitioning to college and still having the values that I did, still caring about the things I did, Black uplift and liberation and all those things, is that, there are a lot of different forms that your activism can take. And it's easy to kind of think that it has to be defined by, either like picketing or doing one thing or another. And going to college really taught me that, participating as someone who is, supporting people that are going through the struggle as you are, can really take a lot of different forms. Like I mentioned before, it can take the form of mentorship and just supporting people in their own career endeavors. It can take the form of advocating for people that might not have as much of a voice as you. It can take the form of being politically active at your school, participating in, a divestiture campaign at your university. It can just take so many different forms. And I think, it's easy to kind of get boxed in to think, oh, only these kinds of people care about these things. But, individuals are very complicated. And I think there's just a place for everyone within, efforts to the end of uplifting other Black people and supporting one another.
I think for me, there's two ways. One is perhaps negative of what being a Black student in predominantly white school taught me, and one is positive. And I'll start with the negative and end on the positive side. I think on the negative side, it was, to say this is everyone's experience, but this is my Black experience, is that I think the aperture of what is possible for you career-wise, and et cetera, it's like there are the careers that are the pathway to success, et cetera. And so I think that in some ways, my understanding of the paths that were open to me were narrower than my white peers. And so that was something that that I struggled with wrapping my head around. It felt like they had the secrets that I didn't quite grasp. And I only realized later that, there's like a wider variety of things that you can do, the possibilities for your of ways that your career and your education can go. But on the positive side, I think attending a school in particular like Sidwell taught me that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that I think Mr. Tonkin, I remember specifically telling me, you are very good at writing, you have a talent, and really pushing me. And I recognize now why he was doing that for me. And I'm very grateful that he did that for me. Because it pushed me out into the world with confidence when I think a lot of other people would have tried to tear me down. Secondly, that going to particularly a school like Sidwell in the city that it's set in, it teaches you that there are powerful people all around you. Some of them have power that is officially acknowledged, some of it isn't, and that they're just people at the end of the day. So who are you to be scared of XYZ, daughter of who, or this person has this title? Everyone is normal and you don't have to be intimidated by that. So
I think for me, kind of like one positive, one negative. I think Sidwell definitely taught me how to navigate different spaces where my peers might not have felt comfortable because I was already in a predominantly white setting, already doing something that a lot of people thought like, oh, you're going to this elite school, like, I mean, and you've been to public school all your life, like you're not built for that. So it kind of got me past those barriers already, where I thought more of myself and had more confidence. But I think the biggest thing, especially with like going into college for me, was like, don't stay in your comfort zone. I think what a lot of me and my friends realized when we graduated was that we had friends out of survival at Sitwell. A lot of us Black kids grouped together because we felt like we needed that to feel safe, to feel comfortable. And my mom didn't really know who my true friends were until after I graduated. And those were people I kept in contact with because who she saw publicly were all the Black kids when I had more friends undercover, you know? So I feel like for me, it just showed like, if I want to have like stronger like relationships, like don't go based on like what I need image wise or like how I feel safe, branch out and like try to go with other people. I think that was a big thing for me making friends in college.
And I'm gonna add a wrinkle to the, well, sort of to go back to a previous question. But please feel free to weigh in, Andrew. If you want to add your voice on that last question. But we were talking about connecting with, or I asked you about the folks who were in your class and connecting with them. Can you share an experience or advice for young alumni or students? We just had another current student join. Can you share advice for young alums or students on connecting with alumni who you don't already know? What's a good way to leverage that network that you all have talked about before, in terms of connecting with people who you may not have graduated with or don't know that well?
So I would say that, I continue to be in awe, frankly, of the rest of the young alumni panel, and the depth of thought that they show whenever we meet or whenever they continue to allow me to meet with them as resident old young alum. And I think that one of the biggest things is it's kind of the same advice for me all around, which is just keep going. Right. And my mother is fond of saying that everything is either a debit or a credit. And it's not transactional in nature, right? But it is saying that, you want to know the cost of something, right? Sometimes you're going to take a chance and it's not going to work out, and that's going to be a big debit and that's going to hurt, right? And sometimes you're going to make a small investment in something and it's going to turn out to pay huge dividends down the road, right? And that's going to be a big credit. And no matter the size of the credit or the pain of the debit, keep going, right? So I never thought that I'd be in a room 6 months ago with Lyndon, Leah, Kiki, and Anna talking about the things we talk about, but just making those connections and making that one step towards connecting with somebody else that shares your experience, it pays dividends, as you guys are seeing here.
I think like while you're still a student at Sitwell, the biggest thing as far as trying to get in contact with alumni would be like the Let Your Life Speak talks at the end of the year. For me, I was able to make some really good connections there with alumni. And I'm not talking about connections just like, what you want to do career-wise or somebody that went to the same college that you want to look at, because at the end of the day, like that matters, but it's not that important. You can make connections otherwise, but just finding people that may have similar interests or like are doing things that you're passionate about and trying to foster those relationships. And then postgraduate, I think definitely like the events that Anna and her group sets up. Like I did the Lincoln Cottage one the year after I graduated, which was really nice meeting some older alumni. And just, being open. A lot of people are like, a lot of my friends are scared to go to the alumni events because like if their friends aren't going, but it's better if your friends don't go because then you're actually having to talk and meet people. So I think that's the best ways right now.
I kind of see, I see it as an opportunity just to kind of take ownership of the community. I think we talked about it a few months ago, I think on one of our calls, but to me, so much of what could be missing from, certain like Black students' experience is really ownership over the community. A lot of people come in from different parts of the city or different parts of the area, and they feel kind of like a marginalized community within Sitwell, and just kind of like the main regular like culture that you're supposed to assimilate to. And if you're not part of that, you kind of sit at the sidelines, you kind of sit at the Black table, you sit at the, the drama table, whatever. And if once you kind of get older, you realize that you don't have to let that experience define who you are as a person. And I think a big part of that is still staying in touch with the your alma mater and taking ownership over the experience that you had, like kind of telling your story as it was, but still, you know, feeling like love for the organization or for the school and, you know, be an active participant in the institution. To me, like that ownership is really key. And along with that comes being a part of a broader alumni community. You know, we're all kind of, once you graduate high school and college, you know, there's not much separating you and other adults, you know, just besides a few years, you know, in age and maybe a few degrees. But beyond that, we're kind of all one community.
Thank you, Lyndon. So we're going to open it up for Q&A pretty soon. But I wanted to go back to advice for current students, because I love the fact that Jasmine joined. So Leo or Lyndon, maybe especially, if you have any, since you were in the school more recently, and then maybe Kiki and Andrew can think of some kind of overarching, just general advice that's good for our current student. And then, as I said, we'll open it up to some Q&A from the audience. So please think about some questions for our phenomenal panelists.
I think for me, my biggest two was take advantage of the opportunities that Sitwell gives you. Like a big thing for me was I did school year abroad. A lot of my friends didn't take advantage of the semester abroad or school year abroad. And I think that was one of the experiences that really shaped me as a person, doing that year abroad and trying to find myself and who I was outside of the Sitwell community, as well as even the service trips. Like I went to New Orleans twice during my time at Sitwell, and those trips really helped me kind of define what service was for me and like what I wanted to do. And then another thing, I think that a lot of people at Sitwell, you got to go to the most elite college. And in reality, like your college decision really doesn't matter. Wherever you go, as long as you're in a program that makes you happy, you're going to do great. And a lot of my friends actually ended up transferring their first year because they found out that the school that they thought was their dream school really wasn't. So I think, like, you know, take your time and figure out what's best for you and not what you think is best compared to where other people are going. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, with those points. In addition, I would say, you know, while you kind of, you know, live out the rest of your days at Sidwell, you know, make sure to build meaningful connections with people. It's easy to kind of have a group of friends that, you know, changes in and out every year, and you lose contact with some people. And it's natural. I think that's kind of how high school goes. But I would say, you know, those relationships will really last a lifetime if you want them to. And you should just think critically about, you know, whom you want to like spend that time with, and what kind of qualities in friends that you want to, you know, replicate within yourself, and surround yourself with those people. I think that those really, you know, those relationships really do go the distance, and growing with someone is like a really, it's a valuable thing, and, you know, it doesn't always come easily.
Kiki or Andrew, you want to jump in?
No, I mean, I don't think I can say it better than either of them just said it, right? Jump in with both feet. Like I said, they usually have better answers than I do, so I'll go with them.
I think that Linda and Leah really captured it well. And if I might add one thing, it's don't be afraid to do hard things. So I also did, like Leah, I did school year abroad, and that was scary, but I think such a beneficial experience. Two of my classmates from school year abroad are bridesmaids at my wedding this summer, in addition to two Sidwellians. And I think that when I would do hard things also applies to academics. I remember Miss Jordan, I don't know if she's still there, her political philosophy class my senior year. I was like, this is really hard, but honestly, it prepared me so much for college. College seems so much easier after that. So don't be afraid to do hard things, because the lesson that you gain from that slight degree of discomfort and pain serves you moving forward.
Thank you so much. We're going to open it up for questions from the audience. Does anyone have something to ask the panelists?
Feel free to simply unmute yourself and ask a question. I think we're a small enough group here that if there's questions that you all want to ask, please volley them up. And if not, I'll start calling on you guys like a teacher. No, just kidding. I won't.
So first, thanks to the panelists. Good work. I feel old Officially, I'm like an old alum at this point, looking at the panelists. So I guess thank you for that too, maybe. What have you found has been most helpful that alumni have done with you guys and for you guys, and how can we do more of that?
I would say from my perspective, I think presence is like, you know, a really simple way to kind of make an impact on people. Going through Sidwell in my 4 years, like, well, I was there for 6, but going through high school in my 4 years, it kind of felt like I was like, you know, my class was one of the first like Black people coming through. And there's an entire history and lineage of people that came before us that we just didn't really have much exposure to just because we didn't see them. So something as simple as like a directory or, you know, a day where alumni and students, you know, get the opportunity to kind of like mix and mingle simply would just, I think, mean a lot, you know, and just kind of understand what our outlooks for a career or just like, you know, life after Sidwell could look like, just, you know, by virtue of, you know, seeing that representation.
Yeah, I think just a second what Lyndon said, that was the biggest thing for me. I said during the first BA summit that during my time at Sidwell, I had only seen 2 Black alumni during my time there, not obviously including Coach Singletary because he works there. But during my time there, I had only seen 2 Black alumni come back for like the lecture life speaker even during the year. I know that there was some presence when the Go-Go was going through like the cancelization, because that was a big issue for the Black community. But I just think like having people come back, even if you came and like just sat around at lunch or like, you know, did like a small talk or did the lecture life speak, it's good to have representation to let people know that there is a Black alumni network out there. So yeah.
I'll echo that just to say, you know, seeing people kind of on the other side and on the other side of the bridge. I remember being in middle school and really idolizing Ralph Lee, right, from a soccer standpoint, and then to go on and be able to connect with him later in life through the alumni soccer game, and to see all the things that he's done in hospitality and with restaurants and all that kind of stuff. I think it's, as you get to be an older alum, sometimes you forget that there are other people looking at you that are looking at you to say, okay, I can make it over there. Like he did it, I can make it over there. And for me, people like Ralph especially are huge, you know, huge beacons really to say, like I said, I can make it too. I can make it over there.
Andrew, I totally agree with that. And I would just say also, I think to Leah's point around visibility, but also like, I guess, transparency. We see people like on the destination, but we also don't often see the journey to get there, and that like it's often winding. And I think transparency around that journey when alums do show up is incredibly helpful, or would have been incredibly helpful to me as a student to see that it's not so linear. I think that things seemed often like, oh, you do X, Y, and Z happens, but to have that transparency, I think would have helped.
I often just kind of speaking generally, I will sometimes, as I'm talking to my juniors about APs, I'll tell the story of going to college and being pre-physical therapy and sitting on my dad's couch sophomore year, spring break, while I was getting an A in a class called reading poetry and failing statistics, and being like, I'm just not happy as a math science major. I'm going to go into English. So there's that winding path that has brought me here, right? That I was headed somewhere very different, I thought, at the very beginning. Being open to that path is really important. Thank you for that. Thank you for the question, Jerome. Anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask?
Jasmine, go ahead.
If you could go back to your high school experience and you could change one thing, what would it be?
That's a great question. Thank you, Jasmine.
I think for me, it would be getting out of my comfort zone sooner. I kind of like I didn't branch out until really like my junior year or so, as far as like even the classes I was taking. Like one of the big things that influenced me at Sidwell was computer science with Darby. I didn't really take that class because I was like, it's an elective, it doesn't count for science, I just need to graduate. But that was one of the things that really shaped me at my future, because before I wanted to go to art school. I took that computer science class thinking it was going to be an easy A. It wasn't, but it sparked my interest. And that's now what I'm doing career-wise. So I definitely think if I had started that early, I think I would have had a lot better experience there, and better, like, I don't know, just better experience.
I think for me, it's a little difficult just because, you know, hindsight is always 20/20, but I would say I would have liked to spend more time with people that were older than me, just a little bit. Because they, you know, those are still people I look up to. You know, they're always going to be 2 to 3, 4 years older than you. And they're going to kind of keep that distance throughout your career. You're going to see them graduate college and you're going to say like, oh, I can do that. So I think like those relationships are really important too, like across grades. So up and down, I would say, really invest in them and don't think it's weird just because someone's a sophomore and like you're a senior now, like why would you be friends? But later in life, it really doesn't matter. And like that can be a really strong relationship just depending on the people.
I got a two-pronged question for the panel. I was unfamiliar with Lyndon played for me, and Leah assisted me in coaching my squad and did an amazing job. And I coached Andrew's brother when I first got here, and I'm certainly familiar with Kiki and everybody else's. I think most of the people here, Jerome I know that I've met, and I see Shaba and different people. So I have a two-pronged question. Like, what role do you think athletics, as you come into this community? I think you said it brilliantly. I think a number of you said it about owning this space. And it's one of the things that I talk to families about all the time when I'm introducing new families to the community through recruitment, to not come here and be a guest. And that's not always easy to do and navigate. So what role do you think athletics played for you in that, whether that was playing, whether that was managing, or any capacity that you may have done? I know it's a good question for Jasmine as she starts her career here. And then secondly, what role do you think not having as many teachers of color impacted you, and how that could have impacted you, in another space, if that was something? I know we're pushing hard for to make our school as diverse in the professor space as we have made it in the student space.
So I can go first. For me, I wasn't the most athletic person. I didn't play any sports as well. I was one of those people that did like the PE class. But I think my sophomore year, I started managing for JV and varsity men's basketball at Sitwell, and that really kind of changed my experience there. Gave me really a great sense of community, which I think that does for a lot of people, the teams. I think that was a big thing for me. And also just kind of like leadership roles in that way was a big thing, being a part of the sports team. And then as far as the Black teachers at Sitwell, I think that it goes against representation. Just having somebody that you can connect with there. Because I know during my time, I think we had about like maybe 3 or 4 faculty members, but only 1 or 2 that was teaching. And I think going back now, like I've had the opportunity to work there as an employee during the summer part of the school year, seeing as many like the Black faculty that Sitwell has brought in, it really changes the environment the students have and the relationship that they have with these people. So I definitely think you can see the difference now with the student body compared to like my experience there, having more black teachers there. It's just a matter of seeing yourself there and having people that you're comfortable going to with any issue.
I say for me, as you know, Coach, saying like athletics was really, I think, where I kind of found myself in school. I just like loved the day in and day out grind. I ended up getting, I think, 10 varsity letters across a bunch of different sports. And that was kind of the place where I felt like I took the most ownership of my experience. Coming into Sitwell, I was never like the most athletic kid. If anyone who, knows me back in 7th grade, I wasn't really good at anything. But I just like, really took seriously like my training. And I think the facilities and the coaches and the community that Sitwell has around athletics, while we don't recruit very aggressively, it really does produce, I think, leaders and great athletes, as we've seen with like a lot of the recent grads who've been very successful athletically. So for me, it was everything. I know that might not be the case for everyone, but I think especially students of color can find ownership in those spaces And they're just as valid as someone finding ownership in the computer lab. It's just a different practice, a different place of expertise. I think on the matter of Black teachers, that is, I think, so essential for having students come through and not feel like they're just guests. This is kind of funny, but the CEO of our company, James Gorman, always says that, and this could just be like a company line, for marketing, but he says that diversity is like inviting people to the party and inclusion is like having them dance, I think the context behind that, like, the subtext there is ownership over how you express yourself in the space. And it's hard to do that when you don't really have any role models or mentors that are there to support you, that you can look to, to fall back on when you think you took a risk and you don't know how it's going to play out, whether that's for your academic or professional career. There are people that are there to support you through that. And that representation is, I think, is really crucial, because when there's just two, full-time Black faculty members, all of the pressure of kind of being a mentor and role model for all the Black kids kind of falls on them, and it's just not really representative of the whole Black experience. So I think there should be the same proportion of students that are of color should be teachers, honestly.
I think to your point on representation, Lyndon, it can't be the responsibility of only the Black teachers. But I think that making sure that all teachers sensitize these issues. I remember Min Kim was the first person to give me Sister Outside by Audre Lorde, and she talked to me about it and said, I think you'd really like this based on some of the things we've been talking about. That meant the world to me. Or Neil talking to me about his civil rights days. Or even I was very close to Mamadou, still am, as a student, and just the way he took me under his wing, and also wrote my college recommendation essay. So all those things mattered. But Coach Singletary, to your point in athletics, I think it creates a discipline and a structure that is so important. And that helps you nurture that muscle of things will be hard, but you can work through them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, two of the girls that I met on the first day of JV volleyball are my bridesmaids. They're still my best friends. I text them every single day. And I think it's no surprise that I met them as well in a team structure, especially a sport like volleyball where you have to work together.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that, on the athletics part, it's certainly where I learned to lead, and it's also where I learned to negotiate, right? And so that's, like you said, if it's 6 people or 11 people or just you running track, right? You're all going to a goal, right? There's trade-offs, there's negotiations, there's teamwork, right? And those foundational skills, it's really where a lot of people acquire them. And I think is one of the themes that I've heard with other people talking. It really extends the same way to Black teachers in the classroom, where this year that I had, that was the place where I could be challenged and have that be a safe space, right? A space where there weren't consequences, right? There weren't consequences for what was perceived as a stray opinion or something that was, a different way of thinking or not in the textbook, right? And so that sense of ownership, yes, on the sports field, absolutely. As one of the places where Black people Black people specifically can excel in these types of spaces. But more of that in the classroom and more diversity and more of those places where you can make mistakes, where you can be challenged, where you can challenge other people without consequence. I think that's of paramount importance.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Eric. And we have, I see by the clock behind Eric's head that we are at 6 p.m., 6:01 actually. So thank you, panelists, for being here. Thank you, audience, for being here. I'm going to kick it back to Anna, but I just want to say again, thank you all to the panelists and to the folks who asked questions. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Hayes, thank you so much for being a phenomenal moderator. Andrew, Kiki, Lyndon, Leah, we are so grateful for your sharing your time, your candor, your insight. It is conversations like this that I think help make those connections between different alums and students and that kind of help move us forward. We just really appreciate you taking the time to be here. The BAA Summit is continuing. We have a session coming up at 6:30 with alumni who are working in a variety of places in healthcare to talk about sort of the pandemic and how it has affected their various careers. So if you are interested in being on Zoom again tonight, please join us there. The full schedule of the rest of the weekend is at sidwell.edu/BAA. So we hope that you'll participate in any other sessions that you have time for and are interested in. And thank you once again to these phenomenal alums for sharing of their time and insight and who they are with the Sidwell community. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Jasmine. Take care, guys.